Okay, without any more fanfare here, I just want to say hello and welcome. You know, what we're gonna do today is educate you on what your business needs to know about the FTC safeguard rules. Make sure that you are secure, that you don't fall under any traps here. My name's Carl DePrado. I'm the founder and CEO of A to Z Business IT. And again, this is something that's going to be pertaining to a tremendous amount of businesses throughout America, because unfortunately, to do business, you need to be able to deal with clients' personal information, and we need to do that in a secure manner. So this is what the FTC safeguard rules are going to be applying to in general. So before we really get started, get in too deep, I wanted to basically give you a legal disclaimer. This presentation that we're discussing today should not be construed as legal advice. You know, as far as that's concerned, if you need to take if your business does fall under this, we're glad to help you in certain ways, but we're not going to be able to give you any legal advice as far as that's concerned. You will need to consult with your attorney, as always, and anything along those manners. But we do want to go over some of the things that are clearly identified in the safeguard rule that you're going to have to do if you do fall under this. And there is a link here that I've put here for you as far as where to pull up the documents as far as what I'm referring to from the from the FTC's commentary. So, you know, we're going to discuss the FTC safeguard rules, and before we, by the way, if during this conversation you say, hey, I need help, I need more than what because realize, we're doing a Zoom call and it is one to many, and you would like to get I'd like to offer everybody a free strategy call that's here. If you look on every slide, you will see a QR code, and you'll also see a website link, which is ftc.a2zbusinessit.com. If you go to there, you can book a free strategy call. We'd love to help you. One thing we'd hate to see is a business get it, from lack of knowledge, get caught, in a detrimental situation. So today's agenda, what we're going to be doing, which you should be expecting after spending some time with me today, is you're going to learn about the FTC safeguard rule, how it impacts your company or your firm, the deadlines and typical timeline of implementation, what the next steps are for getting your business covered and mitigating your cyber risks. I'm going to hit the deadline. It's tomorrow. As a matter of fact, a lot of what's happened in the rule has actually been implied before that. And the FTC has been taking measures against larger companies. We've gotten a lot of large car dealerships that have had some issues. They've gotten themselves in a lot of trouble because they weren't compliant with those writings. Actually, the FTC put this proposal out in 2021, and 30 days after that, a majority of the documentation did go live. Some of the last parts won't until tomorrow, as far as that's concerned. But before we go deep into that, let me tell you a little bit more about me. I'm going to make that as brief as possible because I'd rather get you the information out that's pertaining here. But I'll talk about my company, brief commercial, A to Z Business IT. We're located in Montrose, New York. We are close to West Point Military Academy, if you need that as a reference point. We service all over North America, and we are a cybersecurity first IT support company. A little bit about me. I have over 30 years of cybersecurity and information technology experience. I serve as a mentor to a group that's called the ASCII community, which has over 1,400 service providers throughout North America. I train them in actually this subject, the FTC safeguard rules, as well as a lot of other security information that goes in there. I am an active member of a partnership with the FBI called the InfraGard, which helps, which is a sharing information because, if you're involved in a cyber crime, little fun fact, the FBI will, what was I going to say? The FBI won't get involved directly unless your case in the New York region, the New York area, it's a little less in other areas, but because we're in a financial area, the FBI will not contact you directly unless it's over $100 million. If you're in Nashville, you can get away with about 40 million, but in New York, the New York metro area, it's $100 million. So what they do is they put together a process of they do want to find out about other crimes that are below that number, and so they have people like myself who help report those crimes so that when they aggregate to a large enough number, they know where to attack, and they start to look at the methodology. So by having information sharing, we're able to help that. I'm also a husband and a father of 2 kids. Those are my greatest achievements, Ben and Mackenzie. They're wonderful. And so that's a little bit about me. So let's talk about what you're here for, which is the new FTC Safeguards Rules. And like I said, this is actually, when we say the word new, I'll get a little bit more into how old it is, but it's covering, there's basically 5 elements to this, and it goes from 16 CFR 314.1 to 0.6, and they basically are covering the purpose and scope, the definitions, the standards of safeguarding information, the elements of the information security program, and there are some exceptions to certain business types on certain parts of where these rules apply. And I'll go over all of that with you guys today. So here was, we said before that this was, and it's the new one. So there was an old one. There's a current one as of today, which will be expiring at 11:59 and 59 seconds tonight. And businesses that fell under this had to have a written information security program, which had administrative safeguards and technical safeguards. There were physical as well. And you needed to have a designated employee or employees to coordinate what they called an information security program. And you identified risks and assessed it and created protections around them. You had needed to assess your vendors, and you did every once in a while. You'd have to do a periodical review on your program, and you needed to adjust your program accordingly. This mostly has applied to banks and lending institutions. So that's where it came in first. So the new one is basically the same what we had before. But what they've done is they've enhanced the requirements. They've made it less flexible. There's certain things that they've said these things must be done. They're more definitive requirements. So it's not been left up for interpretation. They've actually gone to a lot of trouble as we become more sophisticated in this. Now, this rule was based on what we call GBLA, Graham Breach Lively Act of 2003. And so that came to be basically applying to financial institutions. And back in 2003, we really didn't have a very good idea of how to properly protect the data that we needed to do. So as cyber risks have increased, we've become much more sophisticated to this. And what's also happened is we've said, hey, the consumer data is not just residing inside of banks. We're seeing this inside of a lot of different companies that require social security numbers or credit card information and or driver's licenses for them to work to be able to do what they need to do, whether attaining credit or even things like doing their tax returns. And some of these numbers cannot be currently changed, such as your social security number or your driver's license number, for example. So it's now going to apply to a lot more businesses. They're identifying these businesses as non-banking financial institutions. So give you a quick idea. This is the former rules that we've had currently that are still in place until tonight at 11:59 and 59 seconds. And you can see that's probably, I'm not going to go through them, but you probably got about maybe 300 words. It's very small. It's very easy to manage. Very not very deep in scope as far as what was concerned. And just to give you an idea of sizing, these are the new rules for the same section there as far as what's concerned. So you can see that there's a lot more on that page, tremendously more, and there's a lot more details, and there's certain requirement, and inside there, they're really not allowing as much, really minimizing the amount of wiggle room that's concerned. So I am going to be talking about compliance. But don't let compliance also confuse you as far as security. And what do I mean by that? If you have a safe in a bank, but the safe is always open, it's compliant. But when you close the safe and you lock it and you limit the people who have access to it, then it's secured. So that's kind of what goes on. So just because you meet a check mark, you always want to make sure that not only are you meeting it, but that you're actually truly secured, because it can be so devastating to your business if you're not. Okay. So let's talk about one of the first things that you need to do, which is you need to designate a qualified individual into there. You're going to build a team around them, and that qualified individual can be a third party, or an outside service. We do this for our clients, as far as that. But what they're going to do is they're going to do what we call a risk. They're going to write a written risk assessment periodically, usually at least twice to four times a year. And they're going to be able to identify controls and be able to create a plan for how things happen, as far as if there's risks, what are the plans to mitigate them? What you're looking at is not because of what they're doing that you need to act on them immediately. You always need to identify risks and then proceed to create a work plan around that. Some things may not be achievable, but you need to be able to identify them and be able to understand where the risks are, so that you can try and put as many safeguards in place to protect your client's data and your business. So the other parts that we're talking about are, when we're talking about controls, you need to be able to authenticate and limit and monitor access. So in a physical environment, it's as simple as you lock up the files, you have a clean desk policy, you have your computers automatically turn off after a log out policy, so they can't stay on indefinitely. You're going to have a way of identifying and managing personal data and where it's existing throughout your systems. You're going to want to make sure that data is encrypted, which is a fancy word. You're going to have a lock on that data. So if somebody tried to steal the computer, they couldn't get into it, or if they tried to intercept it between 2 points, they couldn't intercept it. It would just be a blob that was worthless to them. And then you're going to want to have what we call multi-factor authentication, which is just basically a third party. So when, let's say, you log into an email system or QuickBooks Online, you put your username and password, and you either get a text or to your phone with a number, or you have an application that gives you a code that will allow you to open up that web application. So even if your email, even if your password is compromised, they still couldn't get into your systems because they don't have that third party information. The other part is you're going to want to securely dispose of any information within 2 years. Now, if you see right underneath that, unless you have a bit of legitimate business reason. So if you're an attorney, I believe it's 7 years retention. I think it's the same for accountants. It's 7 years. Even in car dealerships, dead deals, where they hold the client, the person's credit report and all that, they have to maintain that for 5 years. So those rules are going to supersede the 2 years, but at the minimum, if you don't fall under any of those regulations, it's, the minimum you can hold them, the maximum you can hold them outside of those is going to be 2 years. So on top of that, you're going to need to do a plan. It's going to be a living plan, meaning that you're going to be, first of all, writing an incident response plan with clear roles and responsibilities and decision-making. And if you think about it, like when I say, written incident response plan, why that's so important. Let's say you're, you go on a cruise, or you go to, most of us went to public schools. And so what do? They either do fire drills, lifeboat drills. And what they're doing in those is they're creating a plan so that everybody knows when they hear a bell, everybody goes to a designated spot and they proceed to follow proper instructions. And as a matter of fact, I just had a client where one of the employees yesterday got conned. They got an email. They made a mistake. They thought it was for a bill that they weren't thinking, and they let somebody in to get remote access into their machine. Realized within a minute or two that she had made a mistake. She was trying to shut the machine. She couldn't shut the machine. She called us up. We closed the machine down. We've basically wiped out all the remotes. We were able to confirm that they weren't able to get any of the data. And we have a plan now to basically change all the passwords and eliminate anything, but we're monitoring that. So when having a plan like that really reduces the chance of having a big exposure, because she realized that there was something going on when they wanted to access a bank account, and they basically showed a fake screen where they showed zero money in there. And she had in that particular account, over $250,000. which we were able to identify and make sure that within minutes that wasn't the case, that none of that money had been taken and that it was safe and secure. But they were trying to create a panic situation. And so meanwhile, so we've talked about that. You also want to have, you're going to have, if you're, depending on the size of your company, if you're public or even a corporation, you're going to have a meeting with the board of directors that basically overall states the compliances and the rules and the materials and everything that's gone on. So that's going to be done annually. That's going to be done by your designated individual. So on top of that, you need to have what we call an information security plan. So the FTC gives two different ways. The first way, which is the least effective way, and this is when we talk about compliance and security, they said, well, you need to have at least 2 annual penetration tests. These aren't inexpensive tests that go on, and you need to let them run and basically look for anything that might be an issue. And you need to do that at least every 6 months. That's the minimum, as of tomorrow. And the FTC said, all right, well, that's, we'll allow that. And for certain really large corporations, that does make some sense because they will have in-house teams already there and their own in-house security. But for smaller businesses, that makes really no sense. What you're better off having is continuous monitoring. And when you look at the cost of penetration tests versus continuously having monitoring, continuous monitoring is far less expensive and infinitely more secure. But you're going to need to have one of those two things there. As far as that's concerned. So continuous monitoring, you're usually going to outsource that to a service like myself, which we term in the business, which is called an MSSP, which is a managed security service provider. Or we do penetration tests as well. And in certain situations, that is the best way, but they're few and far between. And probably most of the people that, most companies outside of the Fortune 500s are going to be looking at the in the mid-market range, especially to the small business, are going to be looking at continuous monitoring. So let's talk about who this falls under, what business types we are talking about. So 2022, the FTC said a financial institution is identified with any one of these, if they're doing any one of these activities. There's some more on top of that, but here are a couple of them. If you manage large sums of money, directly or indirectly, you're in charge of trusts, estates, you have that information in there. So that's not just businesses. You can be a trust attorney with a large amount of with a situation where that falls under. That can be important to you as well. The other things is if your company provides loans or credit. That doesn't necessarily mean home mortgage loans. Your business might be providing a store account for credit cards or something like that, or you might be creating some form of house of credit or something along that line, and you're collecting basically the credit information. You're going to fall under this as well. So you can see not just that as far as that's concerned, you assist other people in obtaining financing. You bring a buyer and seller together. So you may not be doing the financing directly yourself, but you're providing the lending, and you're guiding them to somebody you've arranged so that they can get credit to purchase things. Contractors come in place all the time because they're always falling into very few people are buying a pool in cash, or they're doing big projects that way. Give you a quick scope of some of the other non-financial banking institutions that will fall under. Obviously mortgage brokers, but people managing, if your business does any type of wire transfers, mortgage lending. You're an investment advisor who's not registered with the SEC. Well, you're going to fall under this because the SEC has regulations as well. Like we were discussing, you bring a buyer and a lender together. You're identified as a finder. And so under that, you would, any person, when you do that and you're getting compensated directly or indirectly, you fall into that. You're a credit counselor. You're helping people repair their credit. You're obviously getting information in there. You print checks. Oh, one of the other ones that's not listed here is if you're a CPA or you're a tax preparer in any way, that you're going to fall under that as well. If you are a travel agency, some of them are collecting information accordingly, passports and so forth. You're going to fall under that. You're a payday lender. what was I gonna say, your home appraiser, that also falls in there. You're a debt collector, you're cashing checks, um, you know, you do real estate settlement, you're a real estate settlement planner. Again, anybody who has that type of access, you're an auto dealership. Hey, not even auto, let's say you're a motorcycle dealership where you're selling boats, you're selling anything where they're going to be doing some type of plan. You could be doing mopeds, that you're going to fall under the same rules. So let's talk about the exemptions. So in 16 CFR 314.6, there are exceptions for less than 5,000 records. So it doesn't mean that you're completely exempt, but there are a few points that you don't have to do. Some of them you may want to do, and I'd strongly advise, and I'll go through that. So you're not going to need to have any written assessment. You're not required to have continuous monitoring of penetration or vulnerability scans. You don't have to have a written incident plan, and you don't have to do an annual report. But first of all, let's talk about what is 5,000 records, because this is where a lot of people get into confusion. So it's a lot more businesses fall into or over 5,000 than are under 5,000. So for example, you run a small car dealership with like 7 or 8 people, and you're filing less than 84 deals per month on average. Well, you got to maintain even the dead deals for 5 years. So that's 5,000 records right there over that 5-year term. Your deal jackets, the closed deals that you have to maintain those for 7 years. Then you also have that data sitting in, CRMs or, operations. And you might have some information inside of your emails, your social media, your website. You're collecting all of the other data. So you need to really double check to make sure that you are not under that 5,000 record exemption, because you don't want to find out in the middle of an audit that you actually were over that amount. So that's what we're always looking at here. So let's go into what is required. So there are 9 items that the FTC requires for the safeguard rule. So I know we've been talking about, but I want to really make this very clear for you. So what are those steps? So first, you're going to want to create a team. This can't be done in a vacuum. You can't just outsource this and put this in. This is going to affect the way you're working. And so you need to work with them. That team is going to make recommendations. Are they written in stone? No. It really needs to be, anytime you add layers of security to a system, what you're looking for is what's going to work best for all parties, so that it basically serves the business. What's what's going to reduce your risk while being effective for your business. And so you're going to want to have, again, inside of that team, you're going to want to select a qualified individual, or you're going to use an outside service provider like ourselves. And what's essential is that they have particular knowledge on how to secure your company at the end of the day. And like I said, if you have any questions, you feel like this is a little overwhelming, because I know we're going to go through a lot here. Again, we do invite you to go ahead and click on our link, or not click on our link, but go to our site for the FTC, ftc.a2zbusinessit.com, and you feel free to go ahead and schedule an appointment with us. Then on top of that, once you've done that, once you've identified your team, you're going to want to do an assessment. Now, if you're under 5,000 records, if you're over 5,000 records, it's very clear. The FTC said you must do this. If you're under 5,000 records, even though the FTC said to you, don't do this, I would think it'd be incredibly unwise not to do the risk assessment. And why do I say that? Well, because without a risk assessment in place, you won't know where you're vulnerable. You won't know where an attacker can come in. So how can you go ahead and make changes to make sure that your business is secure? So you're going to want to do that. You're going to want to make sure, hey, are these other requirements being met, at least as encryption and MFA and some of these other things being met? So even though they have said you're not required to have a cybersecurity risk assessment, I think it would be incredibly foolish not to do that. Then what you're going to do from that assessment, and this is why it's so important, because the assessment runs everything, you're going to create and use safety measures from there to put controls on the risks you found, in that assessment. So that's where we're going from that. So from this, your team's going to create a plan that's going to go through here. And then from that plan, you're going to set up certain controls. You may have controls in place, but you may find that you need new ones. But they need to be checked regularly, anywhere from 2 to 4 times a year, in a business review. And, in some cases, I have clients where we do this monthly, especially when you're onboarding and offboarding employees, you're definitely going to want to make sure that those changes are done at that point. Again, we're going to talk, the other part is we've been mentioning this, and this, everybody falls under this, whether you're 5,000 or below 5,000, you're going to need to encrypt your files, emails, and you're going to be needing to use and so what do I mean by that? Not all emails, but anything that contains what we call non-public financial information from your clients or your employees. And you're also going to need to apply we call a multi-factor authentication, or single sign-on. Again, a control so that passwords alone are not enough for somebody to gain access into the system. Then we're also talking about you're going to need to create a plan to throw away your clients, the information that's no longer needed in a safe way. Again, minimum is the minimum, depending on your business. If you don't fall under anything outside of this, like I said, we've been talking about an attorney or a car dealership, you're going to have a minimum of 2 years. I mean, a maximum of 2 years. After that, time, if you're no longer working with that client, you need to dispose of that information again in a safe manner. It's not just throwing it in the car in the wastebasket. It means you have to expunge the records from your system. It means you need to shred in a safe manner any type of papers and documents that are there at that time to make sure that they're destroyed. You need to be able to audit that. You need to be able to demonstrate that was done as well. Next, on top of that, you're going to be needing to verify your partners and your apps. So no longer, will it be just like, oh, the breach happened because there was a subcontractor and they weren't secure. You're going to need to, and depending on the size and scope of what you're doing, you're going to need to make sure that your contractors are following the same levels, so that they're going to need to have MFA turned on. I was brought into a construction company about a month ago, where bookkeeper was doing their QuickBooks online, and they did not turn on MFA. And the bad guys got in and took all of their employee information because they were doing their payroll through there. They took all their client information. They went into their Dropbox and took all their wire transfers. They're looking right now at about $250,000 fine on top of the mitigation costs. It probably will not be anything under $500,000 from that action. And so, and one part of what the FTC is saying is, well, you need to not only make sure that you're behaving correctly, but you need to send out questionnaires, and make sure, hey, if you're giving your tax and you're giving your if you're giving your QuickBooks Online information to your accountant, that they have MFA turned on as well, or any of the other sensitive stuff, payroll, things like that. So it's more than just QuickBooks on, you have to, that's where the CSRA is so important. I'm sorry, the cybersecurity risk assessment is so important, because you're not only looking inside of your system at things that are resting on your computers and physical stuff as far as how controls are maintained, but you're also looking at outside on the web to see how other places are being accessed. So it's a pretty intensive situation. They're not something that can be done overnight. They usually take anywhere at the very least, a week and a half, on average about 30 days, and even more depending on how big and complex your business is. Because you need to find where all that data is resting, or where that lives, and what type of controls are in place for that. Again, so when we talk about this, so we've been talking a lot about people, we've been talking about processes and machines and data, but the biggest risk is actually people. As you remember, I was talking about that one client where the employee went ahead and got scammed. They basically social engineering was applied onto that system for them. And we normally have some other safeguards to lock down the computers, but the client had said, no, we can trust that person. We're in the middle of reviewing that individual. But what we're looking at here is you need to train them, at least annually. We normally do an annual training, plus what we'll also do is weekly updates as far as that's concerned. But the annual is a requirement. you should be doing that. And you should all, we also do some types of spot training as far as penetration, as far as phishing practices and so forth, to make sure that to keep the employees on their toes as far as that's concerned. And then you want to keep, we've been talking about this written information security program. And before tomorrow, it was a static document. You'd set it once and you were done. This is now what we refer to as a living document. It means that you're going to be doing these reports and you're going to be doing revisions to this. And so you're looking at having this in place because, look, even if you're running all the tools and you have your staff trained, you still have people in the mix, and they have to be right 100% of the time, and the bad guy only has to be right once. So it's really not a matter of if your business will be, hacked or breached. It will be when. And so having these plans in place really reduces your exposure to what can go on. And then on top of that, again, we're talking about assessing everything and training on this. Now, so again, we're talking even like those little updates that you're doing for staff training. What part of that is things change within a year. Think how big things have changed since we are now June 8th of 2023. What was June 8th of 2023? 22. I was in New York. I'm in New York. And right now we can't go outside because of the forest fires. Things happen on a day. And this wasn't around Monday. Today is Thursday. And Monday, the skies were clear. We didn't have a problem. Nothing was in our forecast. So we would have this bad air condition, this air issue that's been affecting people having to go outside. So we're under an alert. Never had that in our lifetime. So what you need to be able, and that's why these rules need to be regularly updated, because they're always in flux. So again, if you're over 5,000 records, you're going to have to do at least 2 assessments, or you're going to have continual monitoring done as well, which is those penetration tests. Again, for ease of use and really peace of mind, continual monitoring is the way to go. And then, some of these rules are already in place. You may be even in shock. You're saying, okay, my gosh, it's tomorrow. Maybe I can get everything, but some of these things actually took place back in 2021. You're already falling under them, such as monitoring safeguard rules and, as far as, risk assessments and all of that stuff. And so that's what's going on there with that. What was I going to say? So a lot of stuff has changed. I know we've been putting I've been sort of giving like a fire hose of information here, and this might be a little surprising for you. But what some of these other things are, okay, well, who's going to be, what are my risks to me as far as this are concerned, my business? Well, first of all, the first risk is that you might get breached, and that can be devastating to your business. First of all, 93% of all businesses that experienced a breach, meaning that they not experienced a breach, but had where the attacker was able to lock them out of their records for more than 10 days, filed for bankruptcy. So that's 93%. If you go to there's a college called Lincoln College, which is in Illinois. By the way, colleges now fall under the FTC Safeguard Rule. We didn't mention them. But if you're a school or an education, you're going to have personal information, and that's going to fall under there. So if you fall under any of that, I'm sorry. So Lincoln College, if you go to their website, it's in Abraham Lincoln's namesake. They were 2019, they had their best year on record, and they got breached meaning that they had stellar attendance and signups, and they were gangbusters. 2022, they get breached. They're locked out of their business for about 6 months. It was a devastating attack. And if you go to their website right now, they're basically closed. They couldn't get attendance. They couldn't sign up new students. They had to send them other colleges. They had grants. When you think about how many people work and are affected by the local college, and how many people and employees and all the other things to be destroyed, that's how badly situations like that happen. So that's part of like the risks that's going on there. It's the reasons that these laws are in place is to really help businesses protect themselves, as far as what's going on here. But they're also putting some teeth behind these measures. The minimum fine, I'm sorry, not the minimum fine, fines go up to $100,000 per incident. And so you get multiple incidents on a breach. We're seeing some attacks like GoodRx just got fined $1.25 million for using patient information for marketing materials. We're seeing some large car dealerships that got $4 million fines. It's happening to a lot of the larger players. As this rule goes into effect, it's going to trickle down to the mid-market and to the smaller players who are here. So yeah, your business will be under that. Now, depending on your size, will they be knocking on your doors to see if you're compliant at the moment? Probably not. But what will be happening is that if you get in the middle of a breach, which on average cost of around $1 million is a breach, and after you've gone ahead and gone through all the remediation and all that, the FTC proceeds to come through and looks and says, did you follow all the things properly? And if the answer was no, they can fine you on top of that. And they will, they're very aggressive on this. They're not, as far as that's concerned, that's their job. That's what they're looking at. So, those are the risks here. So I know I've given you a lot here to think about. And so I gotta say, I have two questions for you. Based on what we've discussed, based on what we're talking about, the requirements are there, are you prepared for the FTC rule? And the other question is, if no, if you're not answering that question with an emphatic yes, then what do you think will happen to your business if you wait? So again, if you want to get a little bit more certainty, up here, I've been putting the QR code on every slide, and up here you'll also see we have the FTC, and there's the link, the FTC.A-to-Z-businessit.com. Again, feel free. It's a free consultation. We'll go through and we'll give you a little bit better certainty about what's going on with your business. We'd love to help you. So, as we, just one last shameless plug about us, at A to Z Business IT, we've helped numerous companies, with this things. And if you contact us and you want to discover how your company is performing, we're here to help you here and help you figure out and resolve these problems. Again, this is going live tomorrow. A lot of people thought this wasn't going to come through because the law was originally supposed to go live on December 9th of last year, and they did hold back on it because the Chamber of Commerce had basically said we don't have enough talent. There is enough talent. The FTC said we've waited long enough, and it is now going to be rule of the land in less than 13 hours. So again, we're here to help you here. We want to make sure that your businesses are protected. Do we have any questions as far as, okay. Oh, okay. I'm a small company, less than 5 people. We're a tax preparing company. We have we file about 600 returns a year. Are we at risk of what's our risk from this? Well, again, we were looking at those 5,000 records. Are you saying what you have to follow? I'm assuming that's the question. Again, we were talking, there is the 5,000 rule of whether you need to follow the rule completely or whether you need to follow the rule partially. If you have over 500 records, your retention on that, I'm not an accountant, but let's see if I can find the old calculator. 600 times 7, you're at 4,200. I'm assuming some of those returns are joint returns, so it's 4,200 records directly, but you might have in there, in those returns, I'm assuming, let's say you have 20% of 4,200, which would be another, over 800. You'd easily be at the 5,000 record if you're doing any business returns. We have multiple people going into those accounts. Again, that would fall under, would bring you over the 5,000 records. And if you're really close to the edge there, you don't want to find out you're over 5,000 records in an audit. And again, like I was going over the penalties, we're looking at right now currently about $100,000 up to $100,000 per incident, and up to 5 years in jail if you're at a certain negligence. Again, we're not giving you legal advice here. We are just basically we're giving you the information that's listed accordingly there. And so if you have any questions, you want to follow us up and ask us where this information comes from, glad to bring you to the FTC site as well. Okay, I guess that's it. Like I said, thank you guys for coming here. I'm really glad we were able to do this for you today. I hope you found this informative and insightful. And again, like I said, if you have any, even if you have any doubts or anything there, we're here to help you. We're not going to high pressure it here. Obviously, your businesses. This is new and this is different. We know there's a lot of changes coming in. But again, if you go ftc.a2zbusinessit.com, we're here to help. This is what we do. So thank you so much for your time. Let me just go ahead and stop. And so I appreciate all your time. Thank you so much. You guys have a great rest of the day. And I'm sure I'll be talking to some of you soon. Take care.